I now invite Senator the Honourable Concetta Fierravanti-Wells to the stage to introduce the Prime Minister.
Thank you. Prime Minister, Mrs. Margie Abbott, my federal colleagues Deb O'Neill, Craig Kelly, Nicholas Vivaris, state parliamentary colleagues, Minister Dominiello, Marie Ficarra, Greg Donnelly, Paul Green, and the Honourable Fred Nile, Your Grace, Your Eminence, Peter Tadros, and your board members of the Australian Coptic Movement Association, councillors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my very great pleasure as Parliamentary Secretary with special responsibilities for multicultural affairs to join you at this inaugural dinner and extend my very best wishes for your New Year celebrations. Nowruz. Tonight affords me the opportunity to acknowledge and pay my deepest respects to Australians of the Coptic Church, which holds a very special place in the history of Christian civilization. I congratulate the Australian Coptic Movement Association on the work that you do and acknowledge that your community has a large and active presence across Sydney, especially here in Barton. As the daughter of migrants myself, I understand very well the sacrifices that many of you have made to build a better life for yourselves and your families, and in so doing have added to the rich fabric of our cultural diversity. Tonight I also have the privilege of introducing the Prime Minister. I have known the Prime Minister since we were both staffers in the early 1990s. I'm proud of his achievements, his policy scholarship, and his dignified approach as our Prime Minister. He is a great leader whose guidance has given our nation renewed hope and focus. I'm truly honoured to serve in his ministry. The Prime Minister has been an advocate of the merits of our cultural diversity and the strength of Australian multiculturalism, which embodies a commitment towards the common elements that unite us, combined with a respect and understanding of our social, cultural and religious differences according to Australian law. He has done this in a collaborative way by reinforcing our social cohesion whilst remaining vigilant in addressing any national security threats. Through his leadership, Australia is engaging in important humanitarian work across the globe, and in particular in the Middle East. But we are also balancing our international obligations to express our revulsion against the ISIL death cult through our decisive military response. It takes a special and real leader to juggle so many challenges whilst remaining measured and resolute at all times. The Prime Minister's presence this evening is a testament to the value of the partnership and friendship we share with the Coptic Australian community. We admire your traditions and universal commitment towards Australia. It is wonderful to be here amongst so many friends, and I would now ask you to join me in welcoming the Prime Minister of Australia.
Thank you so much. It is a thrill to be here. It's an honour to be in the presence of so many of my parliamentary colleagues, yourself, the Parliamentary Secretary for Community Affairs, Minister Dominiello from the State Government, Nick Vivaris, the local member, Craig Kelly is here, Deb O'Neill is here. I understand there are a number of state MPs here, and of course Marie Ficarra, my old friend, Fred Nile, my old friend. It's great that so many people from our federal and state parliaments are here today to celebrate the Coptic community here in Australia and to acknowledge the Coptic community in Egypt, the oldest and largest Christian community in the Middle East, and a community which, as we've been reminded earlier this evening, is under enormous pressure. It's not the only community under pressure in the Middle East, but it is a community under pressure. And here in Australia, we extend our support, our solidarity, our respect to all communities under pressure right around the world, but particularly in the Middle East. The birthplace of so much which is good, the cradle of civilization, and yet as well as the cradle of civilization right now, the scene of some of the most horrific events of modern times. It's good as we look at the horrific events unfolding in northern Iraq and Syria to be here in this country of ours, in the bosom of Australia, a country which has long extended a warm welcome to people from the four corners of the earth, a country which has embraced as brothers and sisters everyone who comes here to become Australian, to make a life here, to aspire to a better life for their children and their grandchildren. This is the Australian way. It always has been, and as far as I'm concerned, it always will be. Yeah. But yes, there are those who would do us harm, at home and abroad. And it's important that even a free, tolerant, pluralist society such as ours defend itself appropriately against those who would do us harm. As you know, the Commonwealth Government has recently increased funding for our police, security and intelligence services here in Australia. Not because we particularly want to increase security. We are by nature people who wish to go about our lives entirely free of this kind of influence. But it's necessary sometimes to protect the community against extreme elements who don't share that general Australian love of freedom, of pluralism, who don't share that general Australian respect for all, an understanding that everyone should be able to live his or her life as he or she chooses. Everyone should be able to worship freely as he or she chooses. And so we have spent an additional $630 million. We've committed an additional $630 million over the forward estimates period to our police, intelligence and security organisations. And as you know, we have committed a military force to the Middle East because it is important that we protect our values, our interests, our citizens and our way of life at home and abroad. This ISIL movement, I refuse to call it Islamic State because it is neither Islamic nor a state in any meaningful sense. As my friend President Najib of Malaysia has pointed out, ISIL is against God, against Islam and against humanity. Decent people everywhere, regardless of their religion, understand that ISIL is a death cult that has effectively declared war on the world. This is my understanding. This is the understanding of the opposition in the federal parliament. This is the understanding of decent people everywhere. I have recently been to the United Nations and it's been my honour to speak at the United Nations, not just with people like the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, but with some of the major leaders of the Middle East, the President of Egypt, the President of Turkey, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of Iraq. They all understand that ISIL is a menace to everyone. They all understand that ISIL kills without compunction. Shia, Sunni, Yazidi, Turkmen, Kurd and Christian. This is why it is in the interests of civilization that this movement be disrupted, degraded and defeated. But in the end, you cannot beat an extreme ideology. You cannot beat a terrorist movement simply with military force. In the end, what is required is a better heart and a new spirit. That is what is required. And while the rise of ISIL has been an almost unmitigated disaster, even in the midst of this darkening time, there are some signs of hope. Middle Eastern countries that have long treated each other as bitter enemies, now working constructively together against the ISIL foe. And it's just possible that watching these depravities, these atrocities, might finally convince all people, all faiths, all cultures, that it's never right to mistreat someone else in the name of God. That in the end, the things that unite us are more important than anything that divides us. What must we understand? I suppose in the end, what we must understand is that gospel lesson that we must treat others as we would have them treat us, that we must love our neighbours as we love ourselves. It's a hard lesson. It's a very hard lesson. None of us fully live up to it, and yet we must always aspire better to realise this great commandment if we are to have a better country, if we are to be better people, and if we are to live in a better world. So, my friends, I say thank you for coming together tonight. Thank you for coming together in support and solidarity with good people everywhere. Thank you for your acknowledgement that all human beings have equal rights and dignity, and that all human beings, wherever they are, should be free to live and worship in their own way, provided they respect the equal rights of others to do likewise. Thank you so much. It's a great night, and Happy New Year to the Coptic community.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your enjoyable and inspiring speech. The Australian Coptic movement is grateful for the strong interest that you have in our cause and for your support and solidarity with the Coptic community.